Big lesson I learned, no matter what you're baking, is you have to let your cake cool completely before you can ice it, or the ice is just gonna come right off. That's exactly it. Comes off your cake. I was like, ha!
It's the Great Taylor C. Baker Show.
Hello, and welcome back to the Great Taylor C. Baker Show. For those of you who've been following along with my baking misadventures, I have been baking my way through the Great British Bake Off technical challenges in hopes to live up to my namesake and become a better baker. And today we are celebrating a monumentous occasion. I have made it through the first season of all of the technical challenges in the Great British Bake Off. I've made some mistakes. I've done some things pretty well, but I've learned a lot, so I wanted to give you Taylor's 2-minute takeaways and top tips from the Great British Bake Off Season 1 technical challenges. And if you want to follow along, with my shirt, subscribe. Thank you so much to my brother and sister-in-law for this amazing Christmas gift. Not my boobs, just the shirt. So we're not gonna go through every single episode I've done, but if you would like to watch the Great British Bake Off technical challenges, hit this playlist here to see all of the things I have made so far from GBBO Season 1. But we're gonna do some of the highlights, some of the things I've learned, some of the tips, some of the takeaways. And first up from my very first episode, Mary Berry's Cherry Cake. If you have fruit inside of your cake and you don't want it to all sink to the bottom, you want it evenly distributed, the hot key takeaway there is to toss in 2 tablespoons of flour. This is probably the secret to not getting it so, this is probably what's left out of the British bake, because that's probably why they all sunk to the bottom. The flour is probably the key. No matter what kind of tin you're using, no matter if you're making a bundt cake, a flat sheet cake, cupcakes, however you want to bake fruit into a cake, if you coat the fruit in flour before you put it into the batter, it will help it evenly distributed and not sink to the bottom. Little galaxy going on, because bread and all carbs are out of this world. A fond thing on the road to baking in the Great British Bake Off is bread. There is never an occasion that doesn't call for bread. The key takeaway from every bread I've made so far, I've made ciabatta. I'm starting with Paul Hollywood's ciabatta. And fun fact, this is the first time I've ever made bread. I've made sausage rolls. We are making sausage wreaths. Oh my gosh, I'm stuck. There's so many things that could go wrong with the very deceptively simple baking of bread. And that's why I wore a tiny top hat. Because when in doubt, wear a tiny top hat. Bread is one of those things that you want to take your time on. Bread is patient, bread is kind. Okay, this is where all the mistakes could happen. So you want to gently pour this into your container. Gentle, carefully. It's almost like you don't really want to sneak up on it. Bread is all about aeration. Gently, gently, pour it out onto your work surface. And we're gonna roll this out. Gently, gently she goes. And now we wait for 45 minutes for it to rest because it's so exhausted. Bread is patient. Bread is kind. You want to use a clean towel to cover it up, and now it needs to prove for another 30 minutes so they can puff up a little more before we bake them. There's yeast, there's rising, there's resting, there's proving. There's so many different steps. It's so simple, but you want to take your time. So take your time and work on over to my ciabatta episode. And bread is patient, bread is kind. Oh. That was a mistake. Sugar everywhere. Next up, we have an education in kitchen tools, namely parchment paper versus wax paper, or as I like to call it, the almost fire of Florentines. So something I foresee being very interesting is trying to get these off, which parchment paper may come in handy. Oh no! The paper is stuck to it! My Florentine stuck to the paper. I did this. I'm so sorry, Mary. Take 2. All right, now I'm gonna ferociously butter this, and hopefully this next batch will not stick. I'm just gonna double oil. Use butter and just a hint of the oil we call olive. Look how greasy these trays are. So I've made a thrilling discovery. I accidentally used wax paper instead of parchment paper, and it basically melted onto my cookies, which is why it won't come off. So Taylor's 2-minute hot takeaway from that is you only want to put parchment paper into the oven because it is oven safe, and wax paper is not. The only purpose I have found so far for wax paper is if you are making chocolate designs and you want to melt some chocolate onto wax paper, make some pretty designs like I do in my tiramisu episode. I make little TCB decorations for the top of tiramisu. So those are things that I made with chocolate and made a real mess with the chocolate. Taking an unwanted trip down marzipan memory lane. Marzipan is super awesome. For those of you who've been baking along, you may have remembered my marzipan misadventures. Already this does look better than what I had made. The 2-part princess cake episode where I tried to make marzipan from scratch, despite this warning on the recipe from the Great British Bake Off. If you use shop-bought jam and marzipan, we won't hold it against you. And I was like, no, this is a learning process. I'm gonna do it from scratch several times and lose a lot of hair and patience in the process. We're gonna skip ahead and make the marzipan. Dun, dun, dun. This does not look like something that can go on top of a cake. My faith in marzipan is mostly restored. This is why the BBC said they won't judge you if you buy it at the store. Maybe if I just get it kind of flat, I can kind of piece it together. So Taylor's takeaway tip is sometimes, as much as you want to make it from scratch, especially when the recipe suggests you do otherwise, it is okay to buy store-bought items when you're baking. It is okay to use things that are already prepared. You don't have to make every single thing from scratch. It's really fun in the learning process, but sometimes baking is something that doesn't have to take 25 days and use a ton of weird ingredients that you've never heard of. I just took a 2-minute ride on over to my local bake shop because every bit of YouTubing and Googling I did to find out why my marzipan is crumbly or why my marzipan is too runny and why can't I roll my marzipan said, buy store-bought marzipan. That was the internet's answer to marzipan. You know, when I even bought this, I was asking how much I needed to cover a 10-inch cake and the woman was like, I don't know because I never use marzipan. So it's okay. From my kitchen to yours, I bless you and give you the freedom to use store-bought items and not bake every single thing from scratch, especially marzipan. Not a fan. Not a fan of you, marzipan. A very new hot tip I just learned is from my recent Victoria Sandwich episode. It was the final episode of the technical challenges in the first season. And I finally, perhaps way too late in this excursion, realized that all-purpose flour should be renamed. I think I may have finally learned why so many of my cakes don't rise in the oven. I don't know about you, but I tend to grab all-purpose flour when I'm at the store. The name says it all. All-purpose. You can use it for everything. False. There are so many different types of flours and they do genuinely serve different functions. This recipe calls for self-rising flour, which basically means that it has other elements in the flour to help it rise in the oven. All-purpose flour, just flour. So I have a handy trick I just learned to turn all-purpose flour into self-rising flour. Basically, all you need is baking powder. So you need to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder per every 1.5 cups of flour. 2 teaspoons of baking powder for 3 cups of flour, and so on. And that'll help give your flour, your all-purpose flour, the rise it needs that self-rising flour has. Or if you're extra sassy and have different types of flours, just use the right flour. But I'm very much one to want to use the things that I already have, and that is a cool tip that I learned. All right, I just had a classic Taylor C. Baker mix-em-up. Seeing as that I am American, there is a bit of a disparity in learning the Great British Bake Off recipes because the Great British Bake Off, all the recipes that I've been using are in the metric system. So before I bake anything, I always translate it into Americanized think when it comes to measurements. And sometimes I'm wrong. So to get started, we're gonna make our dough. I have never been too intense about measurements. I really enjoy the pinch of this, a dash of that. But some of these really specific recipes are very precise. So when you mess up your conversions, it's a problem, which is exactly what happened in my Povatisa episode here. The Great British Bake Off is in the metric system, so I have to do all the calculations to try to get them over to my Americanized noggin, and I was vastly wrong. So let's do this with the right measurements. Take 2. You know, in take 2, my baking spidey senses were tingling and saying, you know what, Taylor, I don't think this is dough. I think this might be batter. And it's not just measurements when it comes to ingredients. It's measurement when it comes to things like height. In my scones episode, I made little sconelets, we'll call them. Said to roll it out to 3 centimeters thick, and quite frankly, I didn't look up the US version of that, so I don't really know how thick that is. They're about this thick. Fare thee well, little scones. May you actually rise and turn out to be bread and not cookies. I got the centimeters wrong of the height of my scones, expecting them to rise. So they're supposed to be 3 centimeters thick, which I was like, that can't be that much. Apparently it's like 1 inch. I remade my dough and made these bad boys, which look much more like scones. Measurements matter. While I am all for baking to your heart's desire and feeling what you want to put in when it comes to sugar, sometimes when you're making really specific recipes, just double check those measurements, y'all. I 100% thought I was about to drop that. Ooh, that would have been a hot mess, like literal heat hot. This one should be fairly self-explanatory, and I'm very happy that despite my original warning at the beginning of this, now in the show they're being timed on this, which is a big part of why it's so hard. I'm probably not gonna put up a timer because when I bake quickly, I'm going to burn myself and cut myself, and maybe you wanna see that, you weirdos. And it's probably gonna happen anyway, let's face it. I have not burned myself, knock on wood. I have not burned myself, cut myself, or had any dramatic accidents in the kitchen thus far, while the kitchen is a very dangerous place. But there have been some casualties. Observe. Oh no, indeed. So be really careful and make sure if you break anything, if you have even the slightest semblance of thought that it may have made its way into your batter, just start over. It's not worth it. It's not worth having pieces of ceramic cup in your batter. Just start over. Almost dropped everything. And my final fun fact, I always like to utilize what I have, whether it's ingredients or baking tools. So many bakes require really specific elements, and that can get expensive to buy all those things. I by no means think you need every fancy kitchen tool to make baking magic. So I like to use what I have on hand. And one of the coolest tricks I have learned so far is when you're baking pies, especially, all hands in the comments who loves pie like me. I am a huge pie fan. A lot of times you need to blind bake your crust, and when you do that, you put baking beans on it so that it helps the crust not puff up too much. And baking beans probably aren't that expensive. I just don't have them. I don't even ever remember to buy them. So I learned a couple of handy tricks of how you can replace baking beans with things that you probably already have in your kitchen. You can use sugar, which is probably the most efficient way. And I'm not gonna like excessively fill it, just give it a little weight on the bottom. You can also use rice. And the great thing about using rice instead of sugar's kind of one and done. You use that as your baking bean replacement, you have to throw it away. The sugar really can't be reused after that. However, if you use rice, you can just keep it and label it as baking beans or baking rice. You can't cook it later, but you can keep reusing your same rice as the weighted baking beans. Cheers! My tart fell off. Oh well. Those are a few of Taylor's hot tips and takeaways I've learned from my first season of baking my way through the Great British Bake Off technical challenges. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe. Tune in as I continue to post new episodes every Thursday, and I would love to invite you to bake along with me. And if you do, please tag me at Taylor C. Baker and use the hashtag #BakeWithBaker. And I will follow along with all of your baking adventures as we bake through these things together. I think that's good. And subscribe, y'all. This was tasty.
It's the Great Taylor C. Baker Show.